everybody. I'm Frank Stanisci of Candid Frank Live, where you'll find us airing our views here on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate, leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on Candid Frank Live, joining me is Aaron William Freeland. And thank you everyone for showing up. This is Aaron. Hello, Aaron.
Hi, Frank. How are you?
I'm a good. It's
Excellent.
well you saw we had some fun. We started a legion. Um, they installed me as first vice president, which means that if the president isn't there, I have to be the president. And I am painfully short on soldier experience. In other words, I don't even know. I had to learn how to salute, something like that, and walk. I have to learn how to walk. I made all these mistakes. I felt like a buffoon. It was a wonderful moment. Everybody was there, and it was an awesome group of people. I was very proud to be selected to be what I am. I'm more than willing to offer you know, my help and volunteering for the benefit of veterans, and now we're adding police, fire, EMS to the group. In other words, first responders. And I felt, listen, there have to be people like me as well. Not veterans aren't the only ones that can be part of the Legion, because there just aren't enough of them. There are a lot of legions, and then you can't cut off a willing volunteer just because. Well, the whole point is veterans aren't the only ones that care about veterans. I care about veterans. Um, I am I am by definition I'm anti-war, but I'm also anti-aggressor. I'm also anti-democratic people. And if I was young enough and I was called to to serve my country, I think I would have, if they would have let me. Um, Only for one reason, and that is that I believe in the world that we live in, and by world I mean this country, and I would defend it. So it only naturally follows that why wouldn't I try to support the people who've made, for many, we don't know them anymore because they paid the ultimate sacrifice, and then the ones we do know that have paid another kind of sacrifice short of dying, basically health, mentality, all that stuff is challenged. And so, in support of veterans, I'm taking part, and I'm going to do my best to do what needs to be done. The reason I say this is because, like I said, I was embarrassing myself. I felt I was embarrassing myself, and I felt I was not doing as good enough job in the pomp and circumstance version of what I had to do, and I feel badly about it. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to quit just because it was hard, and it was emotionally off-putting, if you will. It's not that big a deal for me to put up with what I put up with, and what I did, and how I feel. Multiply it times 10 million, and it's not anywhere close to the sacrifice that the people that I'm trying to support have given.
I've been a member of the Legion for several years now myself, and I certainly understand and can appreciate uh, the desire to support our veterans. It's an important part, even if we are anti-war and anti-violence and all of that. Those who carry out those acts in our names and for our defense deserve all the support they can get.
And the one reminder I'd like to give people is that the people who pay the biggest price when it comes to war aren't the ones who decide to go to war. So I I my 100% support ends at the veterans or begins at the veterans, whichever way you want to look at it. My issue is with the people who decide why and when we go to war, because there have been times when we've been involved in things we shouldn't have been involved in. And of course, there have been times when we've been involved with things that we should have been involved in. And then there's the third option, the worst of all, when you can't say no, when you're dragged into a war because of what's going on. Um, World War One, World War Two, they're the best examples of not having a choice. Some might suggest the Korean War was one that we went into um, less forced to, a little willing to. If I and I think that's treated. The result of that is the Korean War veterans are not treated and held at the same highest esteem that World War II and World War One veterans, and in fact, even Afghanistan soldiers who've gone there, the three of those groups, to name a couple, have been treated better than the Korean vets. And in our Legion, we're going to try and do our best um, to acknowledge Korean War veterans because, again, I repeat, and this is important to understand, folks, I support veterans because they're the ones that go do the work that others ask them to do. Others being us, you and I, Aaron, others being politicians, people who we vote for. So by extension, the veterans are always doing it for us. We may not all agree with what happens, but veterans, that's what they do. And that's why it's not hard for me to support veterans 100% and willing to embarrass myself for them because I think it's that important.
Well, it's good to see more people getting involved in that sort of thing for sure.
We need a few. We get a lot of. What I've learned is that the Legion has a lot of people who join. They join, but they're participants. They're not contributors. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it could be better if they also could help out in some ways that we'll be doing here. We're a new Legion, so I'm learning, and I'm learning about a lot of the things that are done to raise money for veterans. The easiest one for everybody to know is the poppy campaign, and that's when we sell poppies and people buy poppies, and that money, just for a matter of public consumption, none of that money can be used for anything other than in support of veterans. Nothing but the veterans. So when you buy a poppy, that's who you're supporting, the veteran directly. I just wanted to say that in conclusion. Anything else you want to add about being a Legion heir?
No, I think you've touched all the bases, and I'm really excited to hear that you folks will be getting a facility soon as well. So that's huge.
Yep, it's going to be fun. I'm sure it's going to be fun. All right, let's start with sports and let's go to the Canadian Football League. And Aaron, why don't we start with the Stampeders?
So they've signed an American DL, Jacques Bristol, and they've also released an American DB, Carlins Platel. Bristol recently attended rookie minicamp with the NFL's Pittsburgh Steelers. In 2023, he earned second team All Mid-American Conference honors at Central Michigan University after recording 44 tackles, including 8 for loss, 4 sacks, and 1 fumble recovery. In the 57 career games over 5 years at Central Michigan, Bristol amassed 144 tackles, including 28 for loss, 13 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, and 6 passes defended. This is going to be very important for the Stampeders because they're going to be building from the back out now, just to try to replace some of the players that have retired, replace some of the players that have lost or gone to other teams.
First big game that was played, it was an exhibition game, of course, preseason game, and it was Ottawa over Hamilton.
This was an exciting one. Crum and Deadman were leading the Red Blacks in a preseason win. 31-22 doesn't really tell at all. There was a 37-yard return for a 4-yard touchdown by Raquel Armstead against the Ticats. Deadman's next effort was a 91-yard run across Tim Hortons Fields for his first CFL return major since 2021. For those of you who have been following his career, that's a significant chunk of time where he hasn't been able to perform like that. So the fact that those two individuals were coming to the fore is good. Drew Brown started the game in a limited outing. He only threw for 26 yards while completing 4 of 6 passes. Jake Dunaway closed things up. Mark Leggio got an early field goal for the Ticats to sort of get everything rolling. Um, but an efficient return drive by Brown put the Red Blacks in scoring position when Khalil Pimpleton drew a pass interference penalty at the Hamilton 4-yard line. So, lots of stuff going on early in the game. Some good signs, some not so good signs. But the good news is they didn't end up with any supplemental injuries, so we'll
Absolutely.
take that as a good sign.
Absolutely. And of course, Hamilton's Bo Levi Mitchell had a pretty good couple of. He was under center for a little while. Crum was really good for Ottawa. He's a guy who started out really well in Ottawa and then had a slowing during the season that it didn't go as well for him. The next game had Toronto visiting Montreal, and they lost to the tune of 30-13. Aaron, what happened in this game?
Well, as Mike Hogan said, a lot of preseason football is sloppy. Continuity is non-existent because you're constantly swapping players in and out of the lineup to see what meshes and what gels and what doesn't. The Argonauts actually brought 66 players to Montreal, which is pretty much a game roster and a half. So, I mean, Dinwiddie understood the nature of the beast, but was obviously frustrated at times by what he saw. Nothing quite seemed to be clicking. Arbuckle came in to replace Dukes late in the opening quarter and went 7 for 13 for 93 yards without a touchdown or interception. He seems to have a favorite receiver in Richie Sandini. He hit him 3 times for 36 yards late in the second quarter and narrowly missed him on a pass that would have resulted in a 34-yard touchdown. Newcomer Brian Scott played the entire second half. He finished 10 for 20 for 109 yards with no touchdowns or interceptions, though he did turn the ball over on the Montreal 8 when a defender punched the ball out of his hands after a 13-yard gain.
Yeah.
That is something that they're going to need to work on.
Ball security, baby.
One of those things just shouldn't be happening, So
interceptions, quarterbacks dropping balls, not very good. But I got to tell you, Montreal's the Grey Cup champ. They're the defending champs. If you want to make it to the Grey Cup, they're the team you got to beat. And if you're in the East, that's who you got to go through.
Yep.
So Montreal proved that they're ready for another season. Now, admittedly, road exhibition games feature less of the stars of a team. When they're at home, they play more stars, as Montreal did. When Toronto plays at home, they'll have a few more stars than they did here on this evening. So they lose 30-13 to Montreal. The Saskatchewan Roughriders snuck one by Edmonton at the tune of 28-27. This was a close one, a great road win for Saskatchewan over Edmonton.
Now, it didn't start out the way that Saskatchewan would have liked. Boris Beattie, Argonauts legend, had 2 field goals back-to-back in the first quarter, connected from 41 and 40 yards out. So the leg is still there. The good news for Edmonton, bad news for everybody else in the league. The important thing is when they needed plays, they got them. Speaking of the Roughies here.
Yes.
When they needed to advance the ball, when they needed that next set of downs, they obviously got it. MBT was intercepted by Anton Brooks Jr. So that was a little bit rough for him and his return to the CFL after heading to the USFL, looking for greener pastures on the other side of the border.
Found him. Just not much backyard.
No.
Those houses you buy today. You buy a house. Oh, what a nice new house. You go step out into the backyard. There just isn't enough backyard. You build a deck, and you don't have any room for any grass. So it's never always perfect, and it wasn't for him.
No, I'm glad he's back in the CFL. I do wish him certainly a little more luck than he had when he was running with the Argonauts. But
I hope he does well. He's a guy who really was a big part of helping the Argos win a Grey Cup. A couple of Grey Cups, more the last one, but he was a big reason why they won that Grey Cup. They finished where they did so that they could have an easier road to the Grey Cup, and they made it there. Unfortunately for him, and this is the part I hate the most, and I hate for him, is that he got hurt at the end of the game and didn't get a chance to show that he could bring it home. I think he would have brought it home.
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind that he absolutely would have.
Absolutely.
These are the way these things work sometimes.
Now, BC is going to be the home of the Grey Cup this year. And it was the home of a game, the most recent game. Had Calgary visit them, Calgary won 30-6. Now remember, BC eliminated Calgary in the playoffs last year, so there might be some of that going on.
Oh, I'm certain that there's a little bit of the preseason we're going to get you back sort of vibe going on here. At the same time, though, that was a bit of a butt kicking.
Oh,
It was a windy day at McMahon. I don't know if that necessarily affected anything, but yeah. The good news is you can get a lot of information out of a lopsided loss like that. The bad news is you get a lot of information out of a lopsided loss like that, and it's not always what you want. I have a feeling that this is one of those games where the BC Lions found a lot more players playing themselves off the starting lineup as opposed to into the starting lineup. But you know, it's important for evaluation that teams have games like that.
absolutely. All right. Maybe now we'll move on to a story that I find quite interesting. Mike Tyson on an airplane, medical emergency. Connect the dots for me, would you?
Sure. Basically, he's fine. Yeah, everything is hunky dory. He had a bit of an emergency about 28 minutes out, but the medical incident apparently was a flare up of his one of his ulcers. He became nauseous and dizzy due to an ulcer flare up about 30 minutes before landing. They did manage to get paramedics onto the plane to help treat him and alleviate some of it. This is, of course, all before he gets into the ring against Jake Paul on Netflix in the next couple of months, or is it Amazon Prime, one of the streaming services. At any rate, it's going to be a big thing. Uh, Looking at what we've got here, it's unlikely that this is going to affect him negatively. It might be a partial setback to his training. I have heard of other individuals who experienced setbacks with regards to their ulcers after lifting too heavy. So this could be a simple case as that, but he looks like he's going to be recovered.
Absolutely. Let's go over to the National Hockey League and let's go over to the playoffs. And we're in the semifinals for the Stanley Cup. I call it the semifinals, but it's the finals for each conference, which is the semifinals. Florida, New York, Bobrovsky, Shesterkin. Something's going on there.
Yeah, and now Bobrovsky and Shesterkin have basically been going save for save this entire series, which has been a fantastic goalie duel to watch. Um, I know that after the last game, there were some Panthers that were taking small runs at and chops at Matt Rempe of the New York Rangers, trying to goad the kid into fighting. Um, the Rangers evened up the series on Friday night with a 2-1 overtime win at Madison Square Garden. Barclay Goodrow had the goal in the extra session at 14:01. Um, this was a much needed split for the New York Rangers in the first of two games before heading on the road for game 3 and 4. They followed that up by again beating the Florida Panthers. This was a game where um, the Panthers seemed to be on top for most of it. Um, Florida had 108 shot attempts to New York's 44, with 37 shots on goal to New York's 23. The Panthers scored two power play goals while killing off both of the Rangers. They came back from a 2-goal deficit with a pair of goals within 2 minutes of each other and still managed to lose. Wenberg scored the game winner 5:35 into overtime, deflecting the puck past Sergei Bobrovsky. This is the first time in the postseason that Florida's lost back-to-back games. So this puts a slightly more interesting complexion on the series now.
So in this series, there was a penalty called for. What was it called for? Was it called for elbowing? It should have been. Um, Aaron, we've talked about this, and I've made this statement, and now I have an opportunity to back it up. The same play doesn't necessarily give you the same result. The same offense does not necessarily give you the same punishment. It actually comes down to, and I'm sorry, National Hockey League, I'm not a dumb. It depends what sweater the offender's wearing. Is it a coincidence? Is it a coincidence that it's a Ranger who does something that I've seen this year? Suspensions given for that exact same play.
I think it's a combination of things. One is it's the New York Rangers. Two, it's the playoffs. Three, the individual who did such a questionable act actually has a C on their jersey, which is, I think,
But they
additional
also have a
motivation.
reputation.
Hmm. Oh, most certainly
Right?
they do. But as Department of Player Safety has been repeatedly telling us, reputation doesn't play into it. Past
Uh-huh.
history doesn't play into it.
Until they
It is,
wanted to. Until they
I,
wanted to.
and I find it very interesting that for large chunks of the playoffs so far, another player on another team with a C on his jersey has been getting away with similar spirited and elevated shenanigans, in particular with his stick. There were at least 3 calls in the Vancouver series that were not called against Connor McDavid. He finally did get a penalty, but because they found blood on the end of his stick after he pitchforked the guy in the face. So they had to give him the penalty. But yeah, no, a lot of times it comes down to who's wearing the jersey and what's on the jersey, especially in that top left-hand corner right over the heart.
I just don't see how an excuse can be made because it fits. It's the definition. If you they always talk about um, contact, right? Primary contact, was it to the head? No, it wasn't. That's why it's not a penalty. When the only contact is to the head. I mean, it would be primary, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be
And
primary contact?
I would say yes. Looking at the replays, you can see his visor shift before his head does. There's also the fact that the elbow is way out there. That was another thing that sort of struck me as odd, because what would Truba's elbow be doing out that far? It must have been an accident. I don't think he intended to hit him in the head. I
Oh,
think that's
I
why it was
like
only two.
I like oh shoot, Bieksa's explanation. He glanced his shoulder first.
Yeah, no, no. I'm sorry, Kevin. He didn't.
There was
No,
no glancing of the shoulder. He goes,
no.
look at the jersey move. Well, the jersey can move, I guess, but as far as I could tell, again, for me, it's like if you're carrying your stick head height and the guy skates into your stick, it's not a question of whether you swung it at him. It's a question of your stick made contact with his head in a place your stick should not be. And I'm just saying the elbow shouldn't have been there. That's not where the elbow's supposed to be. If you
You know,
extend your elbow, that's the definition of elbowing. It's the definition.
these are some of the greatest hockey players in the world.
Oh my
I
God.
just think it's funny how, and bear with me here, I just think it's funny how some of the best hockey players in the world all of a sudden seem to fall down way too easily, and also have a lot of trouble controlling the height of their sticks. It's a
Absolutely.
minor thing when it comes to the playoffs, but it just seems to happen a lot.
And I think on the Connor McDavid thing, I think he's taken a lot of abuse, and he might be getting a little. But again, it still fits into what I'm saying is that because someone can say, I could say this, I could say, oh, poor Connor, he gets picked on all the time, and he's hurt now, and he got hurt with an illegal hit. He da 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 da. So let's let him have one. Well, that's the whole point. The let's let them have one shouldn't be part of the equation. If
No,
they've done something wrong, if it's illegal, it doesn't matter what jersey they're wearing. All that matters is what happened. And if you don't call it consistently, people like me are going to find a reason why you're not making it consistent, because I just can't swallow the fact that it isn't like just saying, okay, the referees aren't, I can't leave it there. I can't leave it at where, oh, the referees are inconsistent. Because for me, inconsistency in my mind has a motivation. Why does it have a motivation? Because it benefits somebody. So who's it benefiting? The old saying about follow the money. Well, follow who benefits from the poor calls. And I think it's important that the league be consistent. And I don't see how that wasn't an intent to injure. He stuck his elbow out.
hmm
He stuck his elbow out. He didn't stick his shoulder out. He stuck his elbow out. He
no,
didn't
I hear you, Frank, and I 100% get it.
stick his arms out,
Yep,
right? He
yep,
could have stuck his elbow out. That's
yep.
He could have stuck his arms out. He could have held them. He could have done a lot of things.
Have you got any closing thoughts on this, Frank? Because we're about to head into overtime ourselves.
No, we're not in overtime yet. We still got another minute.
All right.
Last word. I'll let you say the last word.
Sure. So the important thing to remember here, folks, is that both teams are out there to have fun. And I understand if occasionally penalties are missed, these sorts of things happen. However, the frequency with which this occurs is something that the NHL needs to tighten up, especially when it comes to betting.
And it's not just narrow differences. That's the problem.
No, it's the glaring errors that
sounds like it looks like night and day sometimes. Thanks for doing this, Aaron.
Hey, appreciate it, Frank.
He's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Go Edmonton, go. Thank you for watching Candid Frank live, Aaron, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 p.m. This show can also be seen and heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank Live, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out SpanglishWorld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, and live it. Let's go Oilers! Last Canadian team. Ciao for now.